Joining us right now is political analyst Steve Swatt, reacting to the events in D.C. Did you ever think you'd see a day like this, Steve?
Absolutely not. I mean, no one could ever imagine, I think, watching really thugs storm the U.S. Capitol, break windows, overrun the Capitol Police, occupy the building, disrupt what was going on, an important event happening in our history. I mean, it really was, to quote FDR, a day that will live in infamy.
So, Steve, where do you think the blame falls for the day's events?
Well, you have to start with the president's speech in the ellipse near the White House that he gave this morning. I mean, he went on and on about how aggrieved he was and how he deserved to win a second term. And he told his thousands of followers to march up Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol and to protest. And he also said, you know, just speaking won't get the job done, and you have to be willing to fight for it. And those, you know, were cue words that they used, and they fought for it. I think there's also some blame, and certainly we will see some hearings at the state capitol regarding the law enforcement by the Capitol Police. I mean, we saw images of barricades being broken down, and these thugs running into the Capitol, breaking windows, and in some cases, the Capitol Police were just sort of standing there watching them, letting them go in. And you know, they must have been under orders not to incite further violence, but it only emboldened those individuals to occupy the Capitol.
So what sort of information or evidence will you be looking for in the days to come?
Well, certainly, one thing I'm looking for is, you know, I certainly hope that the Capitol Police and other law enforcement agencies, FBI, whoever, go through all the videos, the voluminous hours of videos, to capture the faces of some of these individuals and bring them to justice and prosecute. Because if they don't, this just gives them or other people in the future the courage to do this again. And we cannot have something like this again.
How would you say the day's events in D.C. differed from the day's events in Sacramento?
Actually, there were some tremendous differences. In Sacramento, we saw some skirmishes. Of course, there were the protesters and anti-protesters, and you had some individuals with mace and things like that. But you had a heavy police presence. 10th Street, for example, was blocked off. The law enforcement knew that there would be a protest. They expected some potential problem, and they were ready for it. Compare that with the Capitol Police, who seemed unprepared for what happened and were completely overrun by these individuals.
And you were telling me that this reminded you of an event that happened in California in prior times.
Yes, in 1967, about 30 Black Panthers armed with pistols and rifles and shotguns walked up the steps of the Capitol, into the Capitol, and tried to get into the state assembly. They were upset at a bill that was pending that would limit gun use, gun control bill, actually a strong gun control bill. They were stopped. They basically spoke in the corridor with their guns, and then they went outside and did some more speaking. While all this was going on, by the way, Ronald Reagan, the new governor of California, was talking to some 8th graders on the Capitol lawn, and he was whisked away for safety. But what was interesting is that after this incident, that bill quickly passed, and Governor Reagan signed it. And he said there was no reason at all for anyone to be carrying a gun on the streets in California.
Do you think the violence in D.C. will help or hurt partisanship in the country?
I think certainly in the short term, I think it will help. Not too long after everything happened, a Washington member of the House of Representatives said she was pulling back her opposition to the electoral vote count. And I think that was a first signal of some cooperation inside the Capitol building in response to what everyone was saying was just abhorrent behavior and cannot be allowed. So I do think there's a possibility that we will see some more cooperation. I also think that it is a day of reckoning for some Republicans, because I think they need to be careful what they say and what they do in the future so that they're not linked to President Trump's comments today and the action of his supporters in storming the U.S. Capitol, and because they could pay a heavy political price down the road.
Do you think there's a chance we could see the 25th Amendment invoked?
You know, a number of people are talking about that. And the 25th Amendment, of course, is a mechanism that would allow the vice president to set into motion the removal of a president for incompetence or inability to carry on his job. And there are some people saying that given President Trump's behavior, that he should be removed immediately. And actually, one of those saying that is the National Association of Manufacturers, which is a major trade group, a strong supporter of trade policies of President Trump. They came out today and said Vice President Pence should consider invoking the 25th Amendment, because what they said happened at the Capitol today was chaos, mob rule, sedition incited by President Trump.
Steve Swatt, political analyst, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Mike.